Hello guys, in this tutorial I am going to show you how to build a task manager using shadcn and React Query. It was one of my existing projects where I previously used Redux, and now I decided to show you how you can implement it in a better and more modern way. But before we start coding, let's quickly understand why you actually need to use shadcn. So in the beginning, let's understand what shadcn is and why developers more and more love using it. Here you see all the components that are available in the library. So in simple words, it's a collection of pre-built React components. It means that you get something like a kit, a selection of ready-to-use components. And one of the biggest advantages, and something I personally care about a lot, is accessibility. Because shadcn components are built on top of Redux UI, one of the most accessible libraries that exist, and where components are implemented in the right way. So it means that you have already proper area attributes, you have keyboard navigation, and you have focus management. And you are not going to start from zero, you already have a solid accessible foundation, which saves you a lot of time. The components already look good. You don't get the default library look like many other apps that use, for example, Material UI. Especially if you have your own design system, then shadcn is the best choice for you. You have full control over this library. It means that unlike many libraries, you actually own the code, and if you want to change structure, adjust accessibility, improve UX, you can do it directly. So you don't need to think about some hacks or overrides. And eventually you don't need to fight the library. You just edit the components like normal React code. So in order to sum up, shadcn is better, in my opinion, when you care about custom design, when you care about accessibility, which you should, when you want full control, and when you build modern apps or portfolio projects. You still might choose something like Material UI if you want to build something very, very fast and you want a complete design system out of the box. But even in this case, I would still recommend to use shadcn because there are already some websites where you can create your own design system very fast, even when you have no designer skills. I'm going to link them in the description below. Now, why you also should use React Query. React Query is a library for working with server data in React, and instead of manually fetching data, storing it in state or global state, handling loading or error states, having 100 use effects, React Query does it all for you. So why to use React Query? It has automatic fetching, it can fetch your data whenever you need it. It has caching. If the same data is requested again, React Query reuses it instead of fetching from the server again. It has background updates, data can refresh automatically in the background. It gives you is loading and error for free, no need to write extra code, and you can update the UI immediately while the server request is happening. So basically it makes your app feel faster, more responsive and less buggy. So in this case, you need to use useState only for local UI state updates like inputs, toggles, modals, and React Query for any server data. Now let's start with creating the project. I created already the project. You can just clone the repo. I'm going to link it below in the description. But in the beginning, if you start from zero, then you need to run this command npm create white latest and, for example, task manager shadcn. After that, we are going to install all dependencies that we need. You can also have a look already at the package.json where everything was already installed. So for example, we are going to work, as I mentioned, with Tailwind CSS in order to write our styles. We are going to work with TenStack, React Query. We need Redux UI and Lucite React because of shadcn, and we need, of course, shadcn itself. So in the beginning, start with Tailwind CSS and Tailwind CSS White, and then add shadcn latest. An easier way, just copy my package.json and run npm install. What else from the point of configuration you need? Usually you need to add some changes to white config.ts. You need to add these 2 lines and add Tailwind CSS as a plugin, and also to resolve alias in order for it to be easier to work with shadcn and import shadcn components. So now let's see how you can add button, for example, from shadcn. If it asks you to install some packages, you just agree to that. And now you can see that something changed. It added a components folder which has UI folder, and there you have your button that was added from shadcn. Sometimes it doesn't work perfectly to add something from shadcn, but fortunately they have a good documentation how you can add things manually. For example, here you can see that it didn't install the lib folder with utils. So I'm just going to do it myself, and I'm going just to copy code there from shadcn, and I'm going to create a utils file, and it should have only one function. So now everything is fine. So what is happening when you try to add some shadcn components to your code? You do not install the whole library, like for example material UI, and import from a package every component. You now own the code and it lives inside your project folder, as you see. So when you add a component, you literally copying the code into your project. Also, why I mentioned that we are going to use Tailwind CSS, because the components from shadcn come with Tailwind classes for styling. And this means you can easily change color, spacing, and layout just by editing classes. And you do not have to override internal CSS like in other libraries, and your design stays consistent and you can adapt it fast. You can create variants and reuse them. So now, for example, this code, it exists in your project, so you can customize it as much as you can. You can remove unusual or unused functionalities, you can add functionalities, you can recreate your own components based on shadcn components. So there are a lot of possibilities. Now let's also install TenStack React Query. So you can run npm install TenStack React Query, and let's connect it to our app. At first we are going to create a file that also in our lib folder and call it query client. And here we are going to import query client from TenStack React Query, and we are going to create a query client and export it. And in our main we are going to import query client provider from TenStack React Query, and we are going to wrap our app in it. And here we are going, of course, to send our query client. Let's move CSS file to the very end. For Tailwind to work, you need to add these few lines in your index CSS. And then just to check that everything works, let's go to our app TSX. Let's change it to, let's create a div. Let's move it to our div. Let's add some Tailwind. And let's also add some button. Now we can go and check that the project at least works. So yeah, you can see that project started, everything works. Now the main work begins. So our project is going to consist of 2 pages. It's going to be the main dashboard page with all the task lists, and then when you click on one individual task, you're going to navigate to the task details page. In order for that, we are going to use React Router DOM. If you don't have it, you can install it using the same command as usually, npm install React Router DOM. And now let's start building some roads. In the beginning, let's create a folder for our pages. And here we are going to have our first page component, which is going to be task queue. In the beginning, it's going to be just usual React component. And now here we are going to import browser router from React Router DOM, roads, and one road. And here we are going to add paths and our new component. Sorry, autocomplete confused me. It should be element. And then here we are going to use it as a React component. And this thing we can already delete. Also div we don't really need anymore. And we are going to remove unnecessary imports and put CSS file at the very bottom. So yeah, here you created your first road. Now we are going to move to API. So usually, of course, you use some API and you connect your app with the backend. But in our case, we are learning only frontend, and that's why we are going to create a fake API. So that's also a good thing to know how to do it. So first of all, we are going to create an API folder, and there we are going to create, for example, our tasks. And here in the beginning, we are going to create an interface. And we are going to understand what every task is going to look like. It's actually the same when you work with a real backend, and in the beginning you need to align yourself with the backend developer on the data structure and to understand how it's going, what your frontend is going to get from the backend. And that's of course why it is great to work with TypeScript or any other type-safe libraries like Zod, because then you always know what is going to come from backend, and when they change something, then at least your app will inform you about that. So we are going to have an ID, which is going to be number, because why not? We are going to have a contract number, which is going to be string. We are going to have name. We are going to have a status of the task, which is going to be or new or done. or escalated, which means that there are some problems and it can be done yet. We are going to have a birth date. We're going to have sex and address. Why we are going to have all these props? Because that's what my imagination decided. You, of course, can create your task as you wish. And also because I said that we are not going to work here with a real API, we are going to create a fake one. That's why everything is going to be just local. And that's why the array of tasks is going also to just live in our local project. So it means that I am going to create here an array of tasks. It is also the same if you would keep it in some JSON file and then read and write into JSON, but we are going to do it in a more simple way, and you can just copy paste them from my repository. They're just some random names and so on that were created with ChatGPT help. And because we imitate the work of the server, we are going to have a delay constant, which is going to get some millisecond argument, and it's going to return a new promise with resolve and with set timeout. So what it basically does, it just delays the positive answer from server for a few milliseconds in order to imitate some server activity. And I am pretty sure that we want to have some get tasks function that is going to be async. It is going to return a promise of task, of an array of task. Here we are going to imitate our server work, for example, for 500 milliseconds. And then we are going just to return a new array from our tasks. So we are using a copy of the tasks array instead of just tasks in order to ensure that the caller cannot accidentally modify the original array. And we are going to also need an update task function, which is also going to be async. It's going to get an ID of a task, and we want to make it a generic function so that doesn't need to create a separate function for every update. For example, if you want to update name or birthdays, then you need a separate function for name, for update birthday. In order to avoid it, we are going to send here data, which is going to be partial of a task. So it means that something is going to be updated, some prop from the task object, but the function doesn't have to know which one exactly. It should return a task, and we are going again to delay our function. Then we are going to find a task. If there is no task, we are going to throw an error, task not found. Otherwise, we are going to do object assign task data, and then we are going to return task. We are using here object assign, which copies properties from one object to another. It mutates the target object and adds updates properties from the source. So here we do modify the original object. So be careful. You should use it only when you want to update an item in place. For example, in a state array that React is managing, and it is fine only for simple examples. But of course, in the real life, it's much better to return a new object instead of mutating directly. So again, because we are trying here to imitate the backend, and in the database it would be already written, or there would be some history that would save the old value, and then at some point, depends on what, for example, users and clients need and want, they could return to it, to the previous state. But if we suppose that backend usually rewrites in the database a new values, then that's how it would be done. Now we are going to work on our task queue component. It's going to be a page with a task list. So we are going to need card from shadcn. In order to add a card from shadcn, you need to again call npx shadcn latest add card. And then you're going to see here also card. So now in the task queue, first of all, we are going to start with main, because a structure of the website is very important for accessibility. We are going to add heading 1 and write, for example, task queue. And we are going to create a section where we are going to create to map through our tasks lists. But first of all, we need to get our tasks. And for that, we are going to use React Query. We need a hook from React Query, which is called useQuery. And here we are going to receive some things from useQuery. It usually receives query key, which is going to be tasks in our case, and it receives a query function, which is going to be get tasks in our case. And here it's going to return to us data, which we are going to call tasks, and it should be an empty array in case there is no data. And that's it. After we create a task list component, we are going to send these tasks as a prop to it. So now in the components, let's create a component and call it task list. Here in the task list, we are going to return an unordered list. Here we are going to get our tasks from the props. And here we are going to map through them. And here we are going to create later a task item component. Let's at first create an interface and call it task list props. And yeah, it's going to be an array of tasks. Now let's also create a task item component. And here it's going to be a list item. And we are going to get, of course, a task. So we are going also to create an interface of task item props, and here it should be from task, should receive task, and here we provide the task item props. And eventually we want this list item to be clickable, and when we click on it we want to navigate to the task details page. That's why we are going to add here button, and here we're just going to add two spans. One is going to be task contract number, for example. Oof. Have some problems with auto suggest. And we are going to show here status. Here let's remember about accessibility and add some area label that it's going to be view task contract number. Let's just add also name and status. Now let's create an on-click. So first of all, we are going to need a navigation. So we are going to create a navigate, use navigation from, oh wait, not navigation, use navigate from React Router. And for example, we are going to create a task handler, which is going, everything is going to do, it's going just to navigate to task page. And here we are going to add on click. Now let's add task item here. We need to add key. And here we're going just to send our task. And now also let's do the same in task queue. We are going to import our task list, and here we are going to send our tasks. That's it. Let's have a look that it works. So yes, for now it doesn't look very nice, and it's also not going to work. I mean, it is going to work, but the page doesn't exist because we don't have this page yet. But you already see the task list. So now let's continue working and add some styles and more logic. So let's start from the very bottom, from the task item. So here we are going to add some class names. We are going to say that it's going to be flex. Also, even if it's button in shadcn, it doesn't have a pointer, cursor pointer, so we are going to add it. It's going to be full width, justify between item center. Let's take background blue 100, border gray 300, rounded MD, padding 2, text black, text base, transition position shadow. Focus should be outline blue 600. Focus outline 2. The width of the outline. Focus outline offset 2, and hover shadow MD. And I also want to add some differentiation by color depending on the status. So we are going to create a const class name by status, which is going to be border L4, and here we are going to say that if task status is done, then it's going to have border green 500. Otherwise, if status is new, it's going to have border blue 600, and otherwise border yellow 500. And we are going to use it here in our class. That's it with the button. Here we're actually going to wrap it with a div. We are going to tell it to be also flex, also full width, justify between, and of course items center. And for status, we are going also to change a little bit styling. We are going to say font semi-bold and capitalize. That's it for the task item. Now let's add also some styling to our list. First of all, that it should have no list style, for example, like underlines or dots on the side. Let's set padding vertical 4, padding horizontal 2. It should be flex, but flex column with gap, rounded, and have a small shadow. And by the way, in order for these styles to work, there are few things that I removed from the default styles when are added when you create a project from the index CSS. For example, I remove few things from body and in button almost everything, because otherwise you are not going to see anything that you apply with the Tailwind CSS. I also removed the dark mode because we don't have one. Check my index CSS in order that, yeah, by the way, this also doesn't make sense that it is here, but okay. So check that you also removed everything not necessary, otherwise your styling are not going to work. And now let's go to task queue. Here in main, we're going to add padding 6. It's going also to be flex. It's going to be flex column and gap 6. To heading 1, we're going to say text to XL and font semi-bold. And to section, we are going just to add flex 1. So let's see what it looks like. So yeah, now it looks a little bit more beautiful. You can see also the transition and small animation. So let's continue. So one more thing that we want to add, we want to see some statistics. And we want to see how many tasks, for example, we have still undone. And for example, we are going to say that we have 200 tasks as our daily goal. And we are going to see how much is left till reaching this goal. So we are going to create a new component and call it task statistics. And here actually we are going to use our card from shadcn. Actually in this component we are going to see only the statistics of all types of tasks. For example, how many tasks are done out of overall tasks. And later we are going to add also task counter, which is going to tell us how far we are from our daily goal. So let's start with this. And here we are going to render cards based on all statistics. For that we are going to create a stats array. And here we are going later to use some math, which I will try to explain what's going on there. So every stats is going to be an object which has, of course, label. And it's going to be, for example, done. Then we are going to have count, for now 0. And we are going to show actually a percentage. So for now 0, but later we'll do it. And we are going to have 3 more of such. Why 3? Just a second, I'll explain. One is going to be escalated. Another one is going to be new. And the last one is going to be total. And here we do not need percentage, we need only count. And here we are going, of course, render all the stats cards. So we are going to use map. Actually, we can already get everything that we need. We have label, we have count, and we have percentage. Here we are going to return div. As a key we are going to use label. Inside we are going to have a span with label and another span where we are going to check if percentage is not undefined. We are going to show count out of percentage. And if yes, then just count. And this component needs to get also tasks, because based on this we are going to calculate everything. So let's create interface task statistics props tasks now here. First of all, we are going to get a total count. Which is simply going to be a length of tasks. Now we are going to get a count of done tasks, which is also going to be length of tasks, of filtered tasks by status done. Then we are going to need a new count, which is going to be the same, a filtered array by status new. And you might guess we need also escalated count, which is also a length of the array filtered by the status escalated. So now let's calculate done percentage. And it's going to be mass round done count divide by total count and multiply by 100. And you might guess that the same is going to happen with new percentage, which is not going to be done count but new count, and the same escalated percentage. So here now we are going to use done count, escalated count, and new count, and here total count. Here we are going to use done percentage, escalated percentage, and new percentage. So before we move to styling, let's just create a new section. Let's do it under the task list. Let's import task statistics and send there our tasks. And actually what I want to do, I want to remove here shadow because I don't think that it looks nice. But now here is the new status of our page. It's still not styled, but here you already can see that the calculation should work. Now let's style it. So our card is going to have easy styles, flex, wrap, flex row, shadow none, justify between, gap 2.5, border 0, and shadow 0. Here we are going to have flex column, items center, justify center, rounded XL, shadow large, height 20, and width 64. Here we are going to have text excess and text black. Here it's going to be text blue 900, font semi bold, and text 2XL. Let's have a look. Yeah, now it looks much better. Let's continue. Now we are going to add also task counter, a component which is going to show us how far we are from our daily goal. No, everything is right. What are you telling me? Here we are also going to use card from shadcn, some div, And here we are going to build an SVG. I am not going to do it by myself. I asked ChatGPT to do it, so just copy paste from my code. Personally, I don't think that you should be someone who needs really to know how to build SVGs in code. You always can find it online. Also, the infos how to build it. So it's nice to understand what's going on, but you don't have to know it. So for example, here we are going to have a circle, and one part of the circle is going to show us where we are. So that's why one part of the circle is going to be to have muted color, and another one is going to have a full color. And based on these four things, we are going to build a form that we really need. So I'll try to explain what they mean, what they do, and how to create them. Before that, let's create one more div. Here we are going to have two span, and one of them is going to tell how far we are from our goal. For example, here we can write your score points. Here it's going to be done count, which we are going to create. And here we are going to work with remaining tasks. So first of all, let's create a constant of our daily goal. Daily goal, and it's going to be 200. And now we can calculate remaining tasks. It will be daily goal minus done count, which we still do not have. So we need to calculate it. Here we also need to get our tasks. So let's create our usual interface, task counter props, and it's going to be tasks, array of task. And done count is going to be tasks filter by status. And length. And here we are going to go through remaining tasks and show span. And here we are going to write remaining tasks more to reach the daily goal. So now we need to calculate everything that we need in order to prepare the circular progress bar. And there are going to be few things. First of all, we are going to need something that is called circumference. It is the total length of the circle's perimeter. You might know it, something like 2 multiplied by p multiplied by r, which is radius of the circle. Then we are going to need a progress percentage. It's a percentage of daily goal completed. And we are going to need a stroke dash offset. It is going to control how much of the circle is visible. So you might see that SVG circles, they use stroke dash array and stroke dash offset to show progress. So first of all, let's start with it and you'll see it in code. So as I mentioned, first thing that we are going to need is going to be the circumference, which is going to equal 2 multiplied by mass phi and multiply by 90, which is the radius. Then we are going to need a progress percentage, which is going to be done count divided by daily goal and multiplied by 100. And then we need this stroke dash offset, which is going to be circumference minus progress percentage divided by 100 and multiplied by circumference. And here you see that we already use it here. So stroke dash array sets the total length of the circle line. Stroke dash offset hides part of the circle to show progress. Transform rotates the circle so the progress starts from the top. Stroke line cap just rounds ends of the progress stroke. And we also have here some smooth animation. So now let's add it to our task queue. And this one let's add before our task list. And here is our first implementation. Now let's try to add more styling. Border 0, position relative, flex column, items center gap 4, rounded XL, padding 6, actually padding horizontal 6, padding vertical 4, shadow large, and background white. Now here relative width 220 pixel and height 220 pixel. Now here position absolute, top 45%, left 50%, translate X half, same with translate Y, flex column, items center. Here text for Excel, font bold, text primary, text XS, text foreground. Text XS, text muted foreground. That's it, let's have a look. So now you see that it looks much better. Let's continue. We are already getting closer to the end. Now before we get to work on the second page, let's add some filter to task queue, because for example we want to filter our tasks by status. Of course you can create many filters, there are so many possibilities. You can create some toolbar with search field, you can filter by status, by name, whatever you want. In order not to make this tutorial to be 5 hours long, we are going to create only one filter bar and filter by status. So let's create a component filter bar. Here we're going to return div, and we are going to create our filters array. Usually, in most cases, you also get filters from backend. Frontend shouldn't be the source of truth in such case. Backend is usually more informed about data that you have in your database. And that's why, for example, if you build filters in frontend by, for example, status, and suddenly your client or user asks you to change filters from, for example, new, done, and escalated to new, done, and updated, or something like this, and then your application is going just to crash. So that's why in such cases, the best approach is to get everything from backend. But we do not have backend, that's why we are doing everything in frontend. So const filters is going to be an array. It is going to have a type of key and label. Label is going to be string. We'll return to key. So key should be, we know that there should be filter key or done on you or escalated or all. And here we're going to create filters for filters accordingly. So this one is going to be all, and label is going to be all. And then we're just going to copy paste it 3 more times. It's going to be done. New and escalated. And here it should be array, of course. Here we are going to map through our filters. And finally, we are going to use a button from shadcn. It should have key, filter key, variant, not value, variant. We are going to use according by what is chosen right now. I'll add it just in a second. And we are going to use on click. And here we are going to show filter label. Now we are going to receive few things from the props. So let's as usually create our filter bar props interface. We are going to get an active filter, which is going to be a filter keys. And we are going to get a function. For example, on filter change, and yeah, it can be filter keys. So here it's going to be filter bar props. Here we get active filter and on filter change. So variant, we are going to decide by active filter. So if active filter is the same as filter key, then it's going to be default button, otherwise outline. And here we are going to send our filter key to onFilter change. That's it. Let's add some styling at once. It's going to be just flex wrap, gap 2, and margin bottom 4. And now we are going to add it to our task queue. For example, just above the task list. So how are we going to filter? First of all, to task list, we are not going to send tasks anymore. We are going to create filtered tasks. So we are going to work with URL. And in React DOM, there is a great hook, which is called useSearchParams. So we are going to use it, use search params. It returns two things, the same as useState, search params and set search params. After that, we are going to get filter. Search params, get filter as filter keys, and when there is nothing, we'll just say that it is all. Now we need filtered tasks. So when filter is all, then we just use our usual tasks. And when it is something else, we filter our tasks by status filter. And now filtered tasks we are going to send to task list, and active filter is going to be filter. And we need to add also a function. For example, handle filter change. So let's see how it works. It looks like this, and when you click on something, then you can see that you see only done tasks, new tasks, escalated tasks, and all tasks. And you can see that also the URL changes. It means that, for example, if you copy it and you go to done and you return to escalated, then you're going to see escalated tasks. So that's why it's usually good to add filters to your URL. Okay, now let's start eventually building another page. So here in pages, we are going also to create a new page and call it task details. Also should have main. And now let's create a new route. So the path is going to be task ID, and here it is going to be task details. So also move it here, and now let's work on it. Let's add heading 1, task details section where we're also going to show task counter. Here we are also going to receive all tasks from React query. There is no problem to do few API calls using React query because the data is cached. That's why if nothing changed, it's not going to call it again. By the way, let's see what is happening here and what is what. So for example, this query key, it is a unique name for this data. It is used exactly for caching, and it identifies the cached data across the app using this query key. It means that all components using the same query key share the same data. And by the way, except for data, useQuery also returns is loading an error. We just do not use it. And again, if usually we use just fetching and we fetch data from multiple components, then we have multiple requests, which might be also redundant in some cases, might influence performance in a bad way. But with React query, it uses caching. So it fetches data only once, it stores it in a cache and shares it with all components. When does React query refetch data? When your component mounts, it means on your first load always. So React query checks cache. If there is no data, it fetches. If data already exists, then it uses it and maybe refetches in background. Or when you come back to the tab. Or for example, when you minimized your browser or switched apps and then you returned. Of course, when there are some network reconnections, and you might also trigger it manually. So you just need to use refetch from useQuery. Now, when we are going to work with update task, then I'll explain how to update data and use mutation. And additionally, you can also add some stale time, and for example, to tell React query to refetch fresh data every 5 minutes. Now let's find our task. How we are going to do it? We need to get an ID, and we can get an ID using use params hook. But here we need to make a number from the ID because we get a stringified value from the params. So here we are going to send tasks, and here we are going to say if there is no task, then we are going to show something like no task was found. Otherwise, we are going to have section for our task card. And here we are going to create a button to go back to the queue. Let's create a div, span with this back arrow. And a link from React Router DOM back to the queue. And here it's going just to be our main page. Now let's see what we have. So when I click on a specific task, I'm going to a task details page. For now, we don't have any card. We are going to create it now. So we are going to create a new component and call it task card. It is going to have 3 divs and a span, which is going to become a label. Here we will write in short person, and another span is going to be, for example, task name. But in the beginning we are going to get some props, and of course create an interface, task card props. It is going to get a task and also tasks. Then it's going to be another div. Here it's going to be span insurance number. And it's going to be task contract number. Then here we're going to create another div. And another div with other 2 spans, gender, which is going to be task sex. And then another div with other 2 spans, birth date, and then div with status. Then here we are going to have 2 spans of our address. And here we are going to have other part of our card, another div. And now we are going to add also label from shadcn and input. So let's start with label. Like at missing birth date information. In order for users to understand what exactly you want from them, it's better to add format to your label. Let's connect it with label using ID. It's going to be type date. Might add also placeholder, but remember that placeholder is never a solution without label, because users do not see it in a very good way and screen readers do not see it. Value. We are going to create a local state to birth date, and we are going to add on change. And here we are going also to add button. And now we are going to have some section of actions that you can do, which are connected to updating the status. So we are going to have 3 buttons. This is going to be done, escalate, and skip. Now let's add birth date state. We are going to use useState for this one. And we're going to create a function. Here we have onChange, and onChange is going to be easy. It's going to be set birth date target value. But now we are going to use mutation. So for example, we are going to, because when you change birth date in the input, you change the local state. But when you click on the save, you're going to kind of send data to the backend and update your data there. So that's what we are going to imitate here. Let's create save birth date function. And in order for that, we need to create a mutation. For that, we are going to use a hook useMutation from React and Stack query. And here we have a mutation function, which is going to be our update task that we wrote in the very beginning. And here you also can use onSuccess callback. And here we are going to tell to the React query to update the data, cached data. So we are going to create a query client using use query client hook. And here we are going to do query client invalidateQueries tasks. And here in save birth date, we are going to do mutation, mutate. We are going to send ID task ID and data is going to be birth date. And actually mutate, it always receives only one variable. That's why it's better to change our update task function so that it receives also an object. So instead of it, it's going to get an ID and data, and this is going to be a type of it. And now we shouldn't have any more that error. Yeah. And now we are going to use this save birth date on our save button. So what we did, again, useMutation is used for changing data, not fetching. So you're going to use it for any post, put, delete API calls. So you can also use callbacks like onSuccess or onError after, for example, the update is successful, or what should happen when error occurs. So what is query client invalidateQueries? It means that this data is no longer valid. Please refetch it. So after we updated a task, cache became outdated, and we told React query that it needs to refetch it. So UI updates everywhere automatically. And inside mutation objects, there are other things, like except for mutate function, there is also isLoading and error. So why this is so powerful? Because without React query, we would need to manually update all the states around the app. We would need to have in sync multiple components, and we would need to handle loading and error states. With React query, we have only one mutation, one invalidate, and everything updates automatically. So something similar is going to happen with update status. We're going to receive a status, which is actually can be or escalated or done. And then we are also going to use mutation, mutate. As an ID, we are going to use task ID, and as data, we are going to send status. Wait, it's going to be an object. And here we also can add, wait, not here, here we also can add, for example, on success. And here we will navigate to next task. So let's create go to next task function. In the beginning, let's understand where we are, dependent based on task index. We have already tasks, that's why I'm going to use something shorter. And let's find next task, which is going to be task index +1. But of course it might not exist. That's why we need to check it. And if it exists, we are going to navigate. So let's create navigate, use navigate. Here we are going to navigate to tasks next task ID. And if it doesn't exist, then we just return to our main page. So now let's edit, and now let's use update status here by sending update status done, here by sending status escalated, and here just by going to next task. Now let's use it in our task detail page. So for now it doesn't look good, but yeah, let's see that at least something work. So let's do save, and we should see a new birth date. Yes, so you saw that it changed. It is escalated, but if we do click on done, and there is an error. Let's see what happened. First of all, here is one typo, because it should be so. Yeah, that's why it was in red. Let's try again. I'm not sure if it really solved the other problem. Maximum, I have another idea. So I found a typo. It should be, of course, task. It doesn't actually matter, but the main point is that you should use the same roads that you used in your app.pet TSX. So now it works as it should. So for example, if I change it to done, then we go to another task and the status was changed in a previous one. So now let's make it more beautiful. So here we are going to add background white, padding 4, border 2, 2, border gray 300, rounded large, shadow, max width 600 pixel, flex column, gap 4, margin bottom 3, flex item center, justify between, flex wrap, flex column, item start, justify start, full height. Text SM, text blue 600, text base, mean height 1.5 rem, block text blue 600. Now we are going to copy this class to this div and to the spans. Same styles. The best approach here, I think, would be just to build one component and then just go through all this data and re-render this one component, which I didn't do in a very smart way. But of course, if you want to have more control over the whole form, then it makes sense to do so. Here we are going to have flex, justify between, flex wrap, padding 4, rounded large, shadow SM, items end, flex column, item start, justify start, height full. Here let's set margin bottom, and here let's set width 90%. Flex justify between, flex wrap, gap 3, margin top 4, text white, background emerald 500, and hover background emerald 600. This one is going to be secondary. but it's going to be Ember. And this one is going to be outline. And it's going to be gray. Now let's see what else we need to add to task details. For example, to main should be flex column items center. Here we will adjust margin bottom, flex items center, gap 1, margin top 2.5, self start. Here we'll add area hidden true, because we don't want this error to be read by screen readers. Class name text blue 600, text large, translate y 1px. Also text blue 600, text sm, padding horizontal 3, padding vertical 2, hover underline, and transition. So that's what we have right now. Looks much more better, and we can return to our previous queue. So the only thing that is left to do is weather widget. It's not a must, but I just want to show also how to work with a real API and React query, and also we are going to learn how to create custom hooks. So now let's do the last thing, and this is I want us to build a weather widget, so to speak, in order to show you how to connect React query with a real API. Of course, you can use any other open API that you want. Just for educational reasons, I want to use the most common and usual one. And also I want to show you how to build custom hooks. So in components, let's create a new file and call it weather widget. We are going to return here also card from shadcn. And here we are going to add as card content to spans, where we want to show temperature and description. Now let's create a hook. Let's create a folder for that and call it hooks. And here we are going to create a file and call it useWeather. And in the beginning we need a function, for example fetch weather, that is going to be an async function. It's going to return a promise, and let's create an interface of the weather object. So we need actually only temperature, which is going to be a number, and description, which is going to be string. So I'm going to use this OpenMeteor API. It's free weather API, and you can find and read the docs here. So eventually we need to use this link. The most important part for us is to send latitude and longitude based on our location. If the user, for example, doesn't let the app to use his location, then we are going to get an error. There are many things, and to be honest, it's not the easiest API to be used, but again, it's the most common one, and I use ChatGPT in order to understand what's going on here, and eventually there is current query parameters that can be sent, but it didn't really work for me, so eventually I understood, like with the help of ChatGPT, that we need to use current weather and put it to true. Then out of everything that we receive back, we can get temperature and description, and eventually you get description in the form of codes, and you need to translate them. For example, some code is rainy weather, another code is windy, and so on. Here, for example, you see all the codes and description what they mean. So I'm going also to build some sort of mapper that is going to go through these codes and translate them to text. So yeah, have a look at it, but if you want to be faster, use ChatGPT. So first of all, here we are going to return new promise. And the promise is also in the form of weather. And in order to get our geolocation, we are going to use navigator. It is just built into browser sync. I think it is async function. And here we can get our coordinates. Wait, position, coords, and here we will have latitude and longitude. And now let's use try and catch. And in try, let's see the response. And wait, let's use just fetch. And we are going to use that link that I showed you. Latitude, longitude, and just to add current weather true. So now let's do if response is not okay, we will throw new error, failed to fetch the weather. Actually, yeah, throw new error isn't going to work, we can use reject. But if everything is fine, we are going to have a res and do response JSON, and we can see what current weather is. So eventually it's going to be res current weather, and then we do resolve, and here a new object that is going to be temperature, and it's going to be current weather temperature, and description, which is going to be not actually current weather description, because we need to go through all the codes that I mentioned. So we are going to create a function and call it, for example, get weather description. Here we are going to get code, which is number, and we are going to return string. And here we are going to have map, which is going to be a record of number and string. And it's going to be an object of all codes that you can copy paste from the API website. So I'm going to do it. And we are going to return map code or unknown. And that's what we are going to do with current weather description. And this is of course not a description, but a weather code. And also this letter should be small. And if there is an error, we are going just to reject. If our navigator has an error, then we also need to reject it. And we are going to add one more setting, which is enable high accuracy true. And now we are going to export const useWeather hook. It doesn't have to be async. And here we are going to return useQuery. So it can be or weather or error. And let's add all props. So query key is going to be, for example, weather. Query function is going to be fetch weather. Let's add stale time. And we want to tell it, for example, to refetch every 10 minutes. And of course, I can write 60,000, I think. But for better readability, let's use 10 multiplied by 60 and multiplied by 1000. Retry 1. It means that if request fails, it's going to retry only one time. Default is usually 3, but I don't think we need it so much to send so many requests. So that's why I think it's enough to try one more time. That's it. Now let's try to use it. So for example, we are going to use our useWeather. And from there we are going to receive data, which we are going to call weather, and is loading and error. Those two things are coming from React query. So here I can also show you how you work with loading and error state. So for example, if is loading, the opposite, we want to return, for example, div, actually also card, which has also card content. And here we are just going to write span, and we are going to write loading weather. And the opposite, if error, I'm just going to copy paste it, and we'll just write that weather unavailable. And also, by the way, let's check just in case. If not weather, we return now, because you never know. And if everything is fine, then here we are going to show weather temperature. And here weather description. Now let's style it a little bit. Actually, let's see that it works. So in task queue near task counter, let's add weather widget. Let's say class name flex justify center gap 4. So here it is. For now, we are going to style it and make it more beautiful. You see weather unavailable because the browser is going to ask for your location, and dependent on the settings of your computer. Even, for example, in my case, before that it was enough to tell that I allow it. but now you need to really go into settings and allow to fetch your location to the maps, for example. So I'm going to refresh it. And yeah, you see that now it has degrees and the description. So now let's make it more beautiful. So in the weather widget, let's add the same style that has task counter. So I'm just going to copy these styles. Actually, I'll copy just everything. Yeah, and I also can do it to this one and to this one. And again, theoretically, we could just create a component and call it weather card and just change only children. So if you want to work more on the reusability of this component, then feel free to do it. And then here we will add class name flex column. I will also add it here. Here let's do something more nice. Text to Excel, font bold, text blue 800. Also let's add this degrees thingy, and here let's add text gray 400, text XS, and capitalize. And I also want to add an icon based on what weather we have. So I am going to ask also ChatGPT to create a mapper for that. For example, weather icon map, which is going to be a record of string and string. And here I'm going to paste what he suggested for me. And then here I'm going to create another one span. Here I'm going to find an icon that I need. Up. Weather description, or let's add some question mark. So here it's going to be icon. Let's also add, I forgot equal sign. Class name text 3xl and area hidden true. So actually it should be enough. Let's see. Yes, so it looks much nicer. So here you have it, a full functional application using modern technologies like shadcn, React query, and we also cover how to structure UI, manage server state, build something that is also clean, scalable, and accessible. So take your time to play with this project. You can add more features, improve the UI, or even if you want after that to learn backends, then you can connect it to a real backend. If you understood everything, then you already have a huge front-end foundation. Now let's check that we don't have any errors, and also let's run linter. You can find code for linter in my repository. So let's check that everything is fine from the point of prettier and also yes lint. Yeah. Great. And also if you want to change any configuration according to your personal prioritizations, then you need to use this file prettier rc, and here for example I added that I prefer single quotes instead of double quotes, and yeah, semicolons that I need. Here you can add any configurations that you want for prettier. So yes, that was it. If this helped you, you can subscribe for more videos about React accessibility and some project experiments. And thanks for watching. Give thumbs up to this video. If you have additional comments or questions, let me know down below. I will see you in the next video. Happy coding!